I'm here. We're here. Home Depot. Today, I'm talking about something I avoided sharing, but knew it was an important part of my retirement story, and that is working into my 60s or into my retirement. And the fact that I work at Home Depot, or I work at Home Depot at 60 plus years of age, 66 to be exact. I started here, this Home Depot, 3.5 years ago. It's been a positive experience. I'm going to talk about that today and maybe give you some a story that might help you if you're looking for something to go, a company to work for. These types of companies are, I think, viable options. Let me be clear. This wasn't the plan. It was never the plan that I would work 20 some years, 30 years in my profession, whether it be teaching, and then I was going to go to work for Home Depot, collect Social Security and go to work for Home Depot. Not the plan. I think, to be honest, the avoidance of wanting to talk about working in retirement is a level of embarrassment, shame even, that here I am working at Home Depot. I guess I'll throw this in here now. Remember the threats of if you don't pay attention in school, by your teachers or whoever, if you don't study, you're going to be working at Home Depot. I think back then, what I remember people saying is, you're going to end up a Walmart greeter. And I might make a video about that, because that demeans the person you're talking to. But you know what else? It also demeans the person that's doing that job. And I have a story about a Walmart greeter, and it's a good one, but that's just wrong. I don't think we should be talking about jobs or about people in that way related to the job. So maybe that's just me, but maybe maybe I feel this sense of embarrassment because of just my personal experiences. But here I am. Maybe it's a reflection of what I've thought when I look at people. I've had thoughts of, look at that poor guy. Sometimes I think about that when I'm at Costco or Sam's Club, and I look right now, you look at all the people giving the food samples, and you just think, wow, that's a tough way. They're doing that not because of the love of the job. I know they're doing that because all they've probably got is Social Security, and this is helping them buy food, pay the necessities only bills. And so there is a feeling that of empathy, maybe some sympathy. I think of people thinking, look at that poor guy, ended up in retail in the golden years. Again, not what you plan to do. But let me just say there is a positive side to this. This is also an important a feeling that you must have ended up here, Phil, or I look at our people, they must have ended up where they are ultimately because they failed, to carry out a financial plan. They failed to be disciplined. They were irresponsible. Now, this video isn't going to be about that, because I was not. I had a plan. I had financial knowledge, but that's a whole different story. Today, though, it's about where I have landed. It's about making the best of the way things have turned out. So this path of ended up working at Home Depot with my Social Security was not really a result of a bad decision, nor a number of bad decisions. It's a result of the way life has turned out. I had a teaching career. I had a corporate career. And my last corporate job, I was in a sales position, selling an online education program and helping the people then successfully complete it. They found that there was a high degree of failure, which then resulted in a very high percentage of non-payment. So I said, I can get these people through it. And I was getting the people that I was helping through the course successfully. So they put me in charge of a new department that's did just that, get them back involved. Well, that came to an end. I quit that job because there was a change in corporate direction. And then I was off work for a couple months. Well, not having savings that sustained me the rest of my life, I started thinking about what am I going to do? What kind of businesses could I start, et cetera, et cetera. When you're at this age, though, starting a business with little capital, and less energy than when you're younger, that's not necessarily a viable one. I had a neighbor that was working part-time at Home Depot, this Home Depot. And I thought, yeah, are they hiring? I asked her, are they hiring? She goes, yeah. She said, they'd hire you in a heartbeat. And I put an application in and I got hired in a heartbeat. I ended up at the service desk, and thankfully so. The people that work here, there's really no middle ground. There's a bunch of young people, 18 to 25, and then there's a bunch of old people, 60 plus. Not a whole lot in between, except the career-minded individuals that are working up through the company. And I remember in the interview, I got interviewed 2 different times by 2 people, great people. I felt like they were giving me a chance. And the second interview basically was the hiring interview, that like, let's find a place for you. Well, I put the application in for building and lumber. I thought, now, ignorance is bliss. I thought this would be a good way to get back into shape. Yeah, it is, but not at 60. I was 62 or 3 at the time, because throwing around 50, 60, 70, 80, 100-pound bags of concrete, which does happen on occasion. Look, I'm not saying I couldn't get back into shape. Might take a few years. Who knows what I might hurt. But thank goodness the person that interviewed me said, well, Phil, you can choose what you want to do. I recommend the customer service desk. And that just seemed like a no-brainer. I'd pretty much been in customer service my whole life. And dealing with the public and that came second nature to me. So there it was. I said, I'll defer to your recommendation. And she took one look at me, I'm sure, maybe 2, and thought, this guy, I appreciate his heart to want to work in lumber and building materials, but he's better off standing at the service desk. Hey, I want to interject here. I'm back here editing and working through this story, working at Home Depot. And 2 things. Number 1, if you're at this far and you're still listening, would you mind subscribing, liking? It is important, and I would really appreciate it. Number 2, the other thing I want to say as a positive coming up about working at Home Depot is the amount of the younger people that will help you out. When I do have to load an 80-pound bag of concrete or move it, they always step in and say, Phil, let me get that for you. And then I joke around with them saying, when I was your age, I used to do 2 of these, 1 in each arm. I started part-time, as everyone does. Within a month, they offered me full-time if I'd be a closer. I said, no way. And to be honest, there was an adjustment period of actually standing on my feet all day. Something when you're younger, you don't give a second look or a second thought of. But on top of that, it's a concrete floor. And that was a challenge, although I overcame that pretty quickly. Well, after about 8 more months, I was working 26 to 30 plus hours a week, sometimes 40. And I thought, I could use those benefits versus what I had with the government ones. And I decided if I just added 1 more day here, I could get the benefits. So that was a big plus. On top of that, I obviously enjoyed working in this environment and for this company. It was a good move. Let me talk a little bit about the positives of having a part-time or full-time job in retirement. And I even think, and I've met a few people that even have thought about doing this and are doing it, and they have a retirement fund. They don't have to work, but they're choosing to work. But why would you do it? Well, number 1, is the social interactions. The couple months that I didn't work, social interaction became a minimum, and that as much as anything can affect you not so much physically, although the sitting around isn't good, but mentally, emotionally. Lacking that social interaction is not healthy, and it can really bring you down. I remember telling my doctor one time, "Hey, I'm just not feeling good. I feel I'm tired. I'm not, I've never been this pessimistic in my life before." And all he said was, "We all feel that way, Phil." I was looking for those happy pills, but I was kind of glad he had. I'm glad he handled it like he did. Well, getting this job was an immediate socialization booster, and it's been so positive. It gave me an opportunity to meet all kinds of people, not only to work with all kinds of people, uh, which is good, and make new friends, but an opportunity to meet all kinds of people that come in the store, uh, people like you. And for the most part, it's fun to meet these people, all walks of life, all kinds of professionals, blue collar, white collar, and it's fun to engage them, which is what I tend to do. I'm not just there to do a return for you or give you some advisement on the products or put orders in for you. I'm there to just shoot the breeze with you sometimes. And as a result, I now have regulars here that will come to me and say, just start talking about how's it going, ask me questions about my grandkids, or I with them. And that's been good. As a matter of fact, when you have a community that knows you, like in education, you run into your students or former students or the parents of your students. That was always interesting. Well, now I am running into customers of Home Depot all around, and I mean at Walmart. Guy heard my voice and says, "Wait, where do I know how do I know you?" I said, "Home Depot," because I remembered him. And then we talked for another 15 minutes talking about some interests that we have, like interests. So I mentioned about being around younger people. Once you hit your 45 to 50 years old, uh, from that time on in my working career, I was always being managed by 20 and 30-year-olds. Um, so I was used to it, of being around younger people. As a teacher of primarily eighth graders, high schoolers, you're around younger people. And there is a saying that says, being around youthful people keeps you younger. And I agree with that. But it's been fun to see how they respond to me as a boomer. Most of it's positive, but my favorite comment was being told, um, "Phil, I just want you to know you're my favorite old person here." And she knows who she is. But I took that as a compliment, and it made me feel good. It goes without saying, getting a job where you're on your feet all day, you're moving around, is good for you. It was definitely good for me. And, I was averaging 1,000 to 2,000 steps a day prior to working at Home Depot. Now I'm averaging on a slow day 7,000 steps, upwards of 9,000 steps. They say that, it's got to be good for me, better for sure than in the past. But, between the moving and the lifting and the walking around and the mental stimulation of dealing with people one after the other and your coworkers, again, this is a more active lifestyle and a definite positive about working in retirement and working again for a company such as this. It's great to have something to do, to follow a schedule. So that's overall a positive thing. The big negative to that is you don't control your time. You're still being told when to show up, when you can leave, when you can break, take a break, when you eat. So those kinds of things are still, that causes sometimes to become, what would be the word, introspective, and could be a little down. It'd be a downer, depressing, that here you are later in life in those retirement years and you're working, there's been changes. You may be doing something entirely different, but it's still the same. You're not in control of your time per se. So if you've reached retirement like I have, and there's a sense of failure, a sense of you've dropped the ball some way. I think what helps me to realize is is this idea of the stereotype of what retirement really is. Um, there isn't a perfect retirement. There isn't any one way that every one person is going to fit into, because we've all had these different diverse paths to older age. It's going to look individualistic. It's going to look different for every person. And it does. Okay, I've said it. My name is Phil. I'm 66 years old. I'm retired and I'm working at Home Depot. I've come to understand and accept and observe that this hasn't been a step down. It's not been a step backward. All of my teaching friends continue to work because they can't maintain a lifestyle they're used to having on their retirement. Corporate execs, I have a couple good friends that did through the corporate, got into high levels of management, CE, whatever, O's, P's, I's levels. And because they're worried about their money running out, they're going back to work. And it's interesting because their choices for work are usually the jobs that are low stress. It's more common than I thought. At this point, this path allows me to work on my retirement plan, continue to work on my retirement plan. And it's an example of making the best of the way things have turned out. I just have this feeling. That's how I felt when I realized I wasn't going to be able to quit work. What my plan, though, is to not have a career at Home Depot, but to use this as a transition. This is simply a decision, a path forward. Forward to what? Well, forward to the new opportunities that we have in retirement, if we've kept our health, to do some things that will supplement, maybe even offer an opportunity to financially live like we've never lived before even. I certainly have simplified life. That's been a very key component of it. I've had to deal with debt. And as you bring those things into control, I've found that is truly the key, the secret to enjoying this time in our life, the retirement years, in a non-traditional way. So in contemplating these ideas and talking to people, came up with this idea that, our worth, how we feel about ourselves in retirement, does not represent a traditional retirement characterization, one that our value is not measured by whether we stopped working at a certain age, whether we own assets, what kind of assets. It's measured by whether we're still living. And by that, I mean not just breathing, but that whether we're growing, we're living life, we're connecting, we're finding a meaning in our days. And that can look really rich if we continue to maintain hope and we continue to learn new things, especially with our technology that we have at our fingertips, and that we share these things with each other. So if you're a boomer and you're in a similar situation, or you have similar thoughts, trying to figure out what's next, know that there is no one way or right way or best way to do retirement. I guess what I'm trying to say is doing retirement is a way of finding or of being those people like boomers that get things done. Which reminds me, doers do get things done. They'll find a way.